Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. This is Critic Box, and I am your host, Ben Walsh. This week, we have Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, directed by Peyton Reed and starring return cast members Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas, and Michelle Pfeiffer. And hey, we had a Bill Murray sighting in there too. I've got to be honest with you guys, it's hard to get up for this one. Marvel movies are starting to become more or less of the same thing. It truly is amusement park cinema, as famously described by Mr. Scorsese himself. You jump up on roller coaster 1, you go up, you go down, you might hit a loop-de-loop, and you're all done. You go over to roller coaster 2, it's a little more flashy, maybe a few more loop-de-loops, and you might even get sprayed with water at the end. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you know where you're going. A couple quick hits of adrenaline maybe, but it's all similar to what we're seeing here in the Marvel Universe. Hey, I'm not saying it's terrible, the money speaks for itself, but very rarely do I sit down at a Marvel movie and say, now this is something new, or holy shit, I didn't expect to see that. Either way, Quantumania is leading the box office as expected, so we gotta take a look at what the world's critics have had to say about the 31st film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And first up, we have a bad review from who else but the Critical Drinker.
Ultimately, the Marvel Cinematic Universe feels like some old rock band playing their greatest hits at gig after gig. They're basically on autopilot now, nobody's hearts are really in it anymore, they all know the routine off by heart and what the audience expects, and it's really just a case of getting through the set so they can move on to the next gig. Forever. And I have to admit, part of me still held a tiny flame of hope that they might have recognised where the franchise was going wrong after the train wreck of Phase 4, that they might vary things up now and then, try new things, different ideas, maybe break from the old, well-worn Marvel formula once in a while, especially since this movie is supposed to kick off Phase 5 with a bang. Instead, it's just the same crap regurgitated once more, and if the box office underperformance is anything to go by, Phase 5 isn't going to start with a bang, but with a pathetic whimper.
Yeah, so there are definitely so many analogies you can pin on the Marvel Universe right now, especially with this latest installment, and I think it's genius. The aging rock band is definitely the best way to put it. Critical Drinker, again, hits it right on the head. Aside from Wakanda Forever, in my opinion, which was helped by unforeseen circumstances and Chadwick's death and a top-tier director, they've really just been putting absolute shite out there and coloring it with fancy visual effects and honestly terribly timed comedy. It's really starting to get frustrating, folks, to see, but I mean, here's to hoping Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will bring Marvel back to perhaps a temporary state of quality, or maybe even just get the ball rolling to some actual quality in this Marvel universe, because like I said before, it's just head scratching, and at times it's really hard to just get into the theater to watch these movies. So there's our bad review from the Critical Drinker. Now we're gonna move on to a somewhat good review from a top critic known as, I'm sure you all know him, Jeremy Jahns. Let's see what he has to say.
Okay, what I liked about this movie, it's very simple. It's the thing we all wanted to be awesome, but figured would be awesome because anyone who bets against Jonathan Majors is not playing the odds. Jonathan Majors as Kang was fucking epic. I don't mind saying he completely made the movie. The movie has some fun in there, absolutely, but it's the basic MCU talking points you have after you see an MCU film. He showed up to work, and showed up he did.
Yeah, so at this point, Marvel doesn't really need to put much effort towards a script and a storyline because of the brand they've built. People are going to fill the seats, so sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to find those precious cinematic gemstones. And what I was curious to see, or who I was curious to see, was Jonathan Majors, for two reasons really. Mr. Majors seems to be next up in Hollywood with two massive roles in 2023. He had this one in Quantumania and Creed 3 coming out on March 3rd. Not only that, but bringing in a new supervillain into the fold is always fun to see. So let's see what else Jeremy has to say.
Also, I will say some of the CGI is actually really good in terms of setting and atmosphere for a movie that's essentially borrowing from Journey to the Center of the Earth. Tron Legacy absolutely in here. A little bit of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome as well. I thought the world visually, aesthetically speaking, I thought it was fun.
Yeah, and I'll add in a few more to which Quantumania borrowed from. We had Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, Good Friends, Guardians of the Galaxy Volumes 1 and 2, any Star Wars movie, Jupiter Ascending, Star Trek. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to see on screen, New Worlds, but don't slap the words Gucci on a plastic bag and call it a purse. Like, it's just a lot of the stuff that they used was literally stolen from a lot of the movies I just mentioned, and so did Jeremy. All right, let's see what else he had to say.
In the end, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, it was all right. It had some fun parts. Jonathan Majors as Kang was great, made the film entirely. I just wish the film he was in as a whole was better. I feel like this is a better time if you're drunk. Yeah, now it's a quantum party.
Okay, so this review leans more to the positive side, but even so, it doesn't seem like Jeremy loved this movie. And honestly, after a week of being in the theater, that seems to be the narrative about Quantumania. Okay, so we've seen both sides of the coin here, and I think it's safe to say that this movie is not worth your time. The only bright spot to look forward to was Jonathan Majors taking on the villain role. Now, you have to remember the Marvel DC villains are always hit or miss on the big screen, and it oftentimes doesn't even matter about the quality of the actor portraying them either, as we have seen time in and time out. Most notably was the stark contrast between Heath Ledger's Joker and that of Jared Leto's, and we even had Cate Blanchett's terrifying Hela in Thor Ragnarok, but you probably don't even remember Christian Bale's gore in Love and Thunder, do ya? I think what's cool about these actors playing villains is you get to see the actors take on evil as a whole within the confines of writing, and I think it's especially refreshing in a repetitive cycle like Marvel cinema. All in all, Majors was pretty good. He brought something unique to the table, which is all we could ever ask for, and you definitely received that mandatory fear-inducing character. With every superhero movie, you have to have that, and we had that with Jonathan Majors' villain in this case. Either way, I'm excited to see Majors and more movies to come because he definitely has inklings of a star in the making. Okay, so that about wraps it up this week, folks. Please, if you'd be so kind, let us know what you thought about the takes of Jeremy Jahns and the Critical Drinker. I myself am leaning towards the Critical Drinker's take. It is unfortunate to see the way and the state that Marvel Universe cinema is at today. The biggest question I have to ask is the pendulum finally moving towards DC? Is it swinging? We've gone so far to the left on the Marvel side. They have just completely dominated the superhero space in film. But, I mean, after Ant-Man and a couple of the movies before, it doesn't seem like Phase 5 is going to be all that great. So we know that we have Joker 2 in the making, and with the taking of Mr. Gunn over the headship of the DC universe, I don't know. The pendulum could swing, folks. So let's hear what you had to say. Again, Critical Drinker is who I'm going with. Let's hear what you had to say. Maybe you enjoyed the movie and you're going with Mr. Jahns. But either way, we want to hear from you. Other than that, take care, be kind, and have a nice day.